Imagine someone you loved went missing. No goodbyes or explanations, they were simply taken. And just like that, your life flips upside down and you're left with endless questions. What happened to them? Are they safe? Will I ever see them again? Sadly, for many families, this isn't just a nightmare to imagine. It's their reality. And it's not always a dramatic kidnapping. Sometimes it's a teenager confiding in an online friend, or a migrant worker searching for a better future. Every single day, someone is getting tricked and betrayed by others they thought they could trust. Human trafficking isn't a problem for distant countries or a plot to some movie. This is happening here and now. But understanding what it means, recognizing its dangers, and taking collective action, we can work together and protect our community. As a social work major, I have a deep passion for advocating for others. Having my own social worker, I've seen firsthand how important it is to have the right support in vulnerable situations. Real human lives are being bought and sold right before our eyes. If you think this doesn't affect you, think again. Human trafficking is a global crisis that hides in plain sight, affecting individuals, families, and entire communities. This multi-billion-dollar industry thrives on the exploitation of victims, forcing them into labor or services through deception, coercion, and violence, all for the traffickers' profit. Traffickers don't just look for any victim. They prey on the most vulnerable, including children in the foster care or juvenile system, runaway and homeless youth, immigrants without legal status, and individuals facing poverty, discrimination, or unstable living conditions. Black and Indigenous communities, the LGBTQI+ community, migrant workers, and those with disabilities or struggling with substance abuse are at even higher risk. Why? Because traffickers know that sadly, these individuals often have nowhere to turn and no one looking out for them. Victims are commonly lured in with false promises. A job that turns out to be a lie or a trap, a relationship that was never real, or even an opportunity that quickly turns into a nightmare of abuse, fear, and control. Many are forced to work in terrible conditions, receiving little to no pay. Due to the hidden nature of this crime, accurate statistics are almost impossible to find. However, according to data from Counter Trafficking Data Collaborative, nearly half of identified victims report being exploited for sex, while 39 are forced into labor. The most common industries where forced labor occurs include domestic work, which is 30%, construction with 16%, and agriculture with 10%. Women and young girls make up for the vast majority of those trafficked for commercial sexual exploitation. But these aren't just numbers, they aren't just statistics, they're real human lives. To understand a little bit more, let's meet some of the survivors of this devastating reality. Meet Fainus Lepenga. Fainus grew up in a poor village with no electricity or running water and suffered abuse since childhood. She was promised a better life working in the household of a diplomat from her home country, Malawi. She was told she would be brought to the United States, work to save money for her family back home, and even receive an education. So of course she was very excited, very hopeful, except this new life had been nothing what she was promised. Her employer took away her passport, locked her in the house, disconnected the phone, and she was forced to sleep on the basement floor. Fainus was constantly working. I mean, all the time. From the moment her eyes opened to the moment they closed. Her employee would allow her friends and colleagues to bring their children over, and she was just expected to take care of them. And on top of that, her employer was married to a commercial cleaning owner, and Fainus would get woken up in the middle of the night to be taken to business buildings to clean using heavy machinery, just to work when she got back home again. She was getting paid less than 40 cents an hour and was relentlessly physically and verbally abused. There was even a time she heard her employer bragging that she made her sign a contract, in English of course, when she couldn't understand it at the time, stating she would be getting paid $980 a month. I was used, like a piece of clothing you wear, like I was not a person. She had no escape. That was until she found her passport one day while cleaning and realized physical escape might be the only escape there is at all. She was so torn down that she had to be hospitalized, but that didn't stop her from escaping to her neighbor's house to finally get free. Fainus' story is one of many, unfortunately, emphasizing how fast human trafficking could fall into place. She was simply offered a better opportunity for her and her family, just to be trapped. Now let's talk about Catherine. Catherine McDew was 21 when she met a 45-year-old man who enticed her using the Romeo pimp method. He gave her the attention she lacked at home, listened to her issues, told her he loved her, and even made her believe that he was her boyfriend. All that to just use that trust against her. He had her under his complete control, got her addicted to drugs and alcohol, groomed her away from her parents, and she was even taken to a warehouse where he beat her, raped her, and suddenly told her that she owed him for all the money of the drugs she's ever used in the past. The man chained Catherine onto a bed one day and was then raped by him and several of his friends. I just couldn't believe it. The more I cried, the more pleasure he got out of it. Sadly, she can't have kids today due to the injuries. Eventually, he got arrested for an additional rape and theft charge, but she was left with these feelings of despair, confusion, and anger. Now what was she supposed to do? With nowhere left to go, she did what she was taught by him and turned to the streets for 17 years until she ended up in jail herself. Catherine tried treatment because she thought it would keep her out of a jail, but instead met a woman who had a similar story to her. She's helped her stay sober for 13 years now. Human trafficking is a hidden crisis that feeds off the exploitation of the most vulnerable people in our communities, including children, marginalized people, and those just seeking opportunity. Whether through forced labor or sex trafficking, traffickers manipulate their victims with false promises, threats, and violence, trapping them in inhumane conditions for their own benefit. Victims are often hidden in plain sight, suffering in silence while the world moves on around them. Understanding who is most vulnerable to human trafficking is only part of the solution. To fight this crisis together, we must also recognize the methods traffickers use to lure, manipulate, and control their victims. Traffickers are often strategic and thoughtful, often using deception, coercion, and violence to exploit individuals who may already be in a difficult situation. Let's talk more about their tactics and how we can recognize the warning signs before exploitation takes place. Traffickers commonly rely on false job offers, promises of love or stability, social media grooming, and threats of harm to trap victims in forced labor or sex trafficking. A victim of labor trafficking or exploitation may experience feeling trapped in their job due to pressure from their employer or fear of leaving, owe money to their employer or are not receiving the wages they were promised, lack control over their passport or identity documents, face threats from their employer including deportation or harm if they try to leave, work in unsafe conditions without proper training, safety equipment, or necessary breaks, and lastly, live in an overcrowded, unsanitary, or inhumane housing provided by their employer. A person may be a victim of sex trafficking if they want to leave commercial sex work but feel afraid or unable to do so. Situations include feeling pressured or coerced into engaging in commercial sex even if they were initially reluctant, live where they work or are transported under supervision, often by guards or traffickers, are minors who depend on a family member with substance abuse issue or history of abuse, have a pimp or manager controlling their activities in the commercial sex industry, work in environments where sex acts for money are common, such as strip clubs, go-go bars, or illegal massage businesses, and lastly, have a controlling partner, guardian, or spouse who restricts their movements, communications, and financial access, preventing them from seeking help. Traffickers use deception, manipulation, and threats to trap their victims, taking advantage of those who are vulnerable and in need of help. This is simply just dehumanizing, leaving victims feeling trapped, isolated, and powerless. Some are promised a better job, others are lured in by false love, and most are controlled through fear. Whether it's someone stuck in a job they can't leave, a person closely watching them, or a victim afraid to seek help, these are not red flags we should ignore. Awareness is the first step to action, because when we know what to look for, we can help protect those at risk and stop trafficking all at once. Collective action like supporting anti-trafficking organizations or advocating for stronger policies can create a change if we work together. Estimated to involve more than 2 million victims a year, human trafficking legal action was only added recently. In the year 2000, the United Nations passed the Palermo Protocol, an essential international agreement to combat trafficking. That same year, the United States enacted the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which then influenced states to join in as well. Texas and Washington became the first to criminalize human trafficking in 2003, and within 8 years, nearly every state had similar laws. From the start, experts agreed on a three-part approach for this, known as the 3 Ps. Prosecution, punish traffickers and hold them accountable. Protection, support and assist survivors in rebuilding their lives. And 3, prevention, raise awareness and educate the public to stop human trafficking before it starts. The 4th P was later added, partnership, to highlight the need for collaboration between governments, nonprofits, businesses, and individuals. We all need to work together. Laws like the Human Trafficking Victims Protection Act and organizations like the Polaris International Justice Mission and the National Center for Missing Camp Exploited Children work tirelessly to rescue victims, prosecute traffickers, and support survivors. But the fight isn't just for governments and nonprofits, it's for all of us. We can learn the signs, report suspicious activity, support and assist anti-trafficking organizations, and raise awareness in our communities to make a change. Human trafficking is one of the greatest injustices of our time, and it continues to happen because either people just don't see it or they choose to look away. But the truth is, it's happening all around us, affecting real communities, real families, and real people. Every victim was once a person simply looking for a better life, trusting the wrong person, or falling into a situation they couldn't escape. But the truth is, human trafficking isn't invincible, and we can fight back. Raising awareness, recognizing the warning signs, and supporting anti-trafficking organizations go a long way. We can break the cycle of exploitation and protect those who need it the most. We have the power to make a difference, not just by understanding what human trafficking is, but to act. We can support survivors, report suspicious activity, demand stronger policies, and support organizations like the Polaris Project that work every day just to fight this crisis. Just don't forget, no one is truly safe. Keep your eyes open, as it could happen to your coworker, your neighbor, a friend, or even you. Report suspicious activity. If you suspect trafficking, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 188-373-788 or text HELP to 233-733.